The iron gates of Millworth Cemetery wore rust like ceremonial paint, orange-brown streaks that looked almost arterial in the October moonlight. Tobias Cole stood before them with his phone raised, filming his three friends as they approached through the autumn-stripped trees. "Tell the folks at home why we're here, Cora," he said, panning to the tall black woman in the vintage bomber jacket who was consulting a battered notebook. Cora Baptiste looked up, her dark eyes serious, because tonight marks 73 years since the Harrow Mill fire, 17 dead, and according to local legend, the gravedigger appears on death anniversaries too. "To consume souls," interrupted Griffin Hayes, making his voice theatrical and ghostly. He was grinning, his blonde hair catching the moonlight as he spread his arms wide. "Come on, Cora. We're 24 years old. This is some Scooby-Doo bullshit your grandmother told you to keep kids from vandalizing the cemetery." "My grandmother didn't lie," Cora said quietly. "Didn't say she lied. Said she believed in fairy tales." Griffin pulled a flask from his jacket. "I propose we go in there, get drunk on great-granddad's bourbon, maybe make out a little." He winked at Lena Ortiz, who rolled her eyes, "and prove once and for all that the only thing scary in cemeteries is how much people pay to rot in them." Lena, petite and sharp-featured with short black hair, looked at Cora. "You really believe this?" Cora's jaw tightened. "My grandmother knew things. She told me never to come here on anniversary nights, never to speak loudly near the graves, and never ever to look the gravedigger in the face if I saw him. If being the operative word," Tobias said, though his voice lacked Griffin's mockery. He and Cora had known each other since childhood. He'd seen her grandmother's fear, real and visceral, whenever the old woman spoke of the cemetery. "But you said you needed to do this, to face it. So here we are." Cora nodded once, then pushed open the gates. They shrieked like something dying. The cemetery sprawled across 5 acres of rolling hillside, Victorian monuments rising like broken teeth against the sky. Tobias kept filming as they walked the main path, his camera light casting jumping shadows that made the stone angels seem to shift and breathe. "Jesus, it's cold," Lena muttered, pulling her coat tighter. The temperature had dropped at least 15 degrees since they'd entered. Their breath came in visible plumes that hung too long in the still air. "It's October in New England," Griffin said. "Of course it's cold." But even he looked uncomfortable. The cemetery was too quiet. No wind rustled the remaining leaves. No animals moved in the underbrush. Just silence, vast and expectant, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Cora led them to the mass grave where the Harrow Mill victims were buried, a large flat marker inscribed with 17 names and a single date, October 29th, 1951, exactly 73 years ago tonight. "This is where he appears," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "On death anniversaries. My grandmother saw him here in 1976, the 25th anniversary. She was 17, here with friends, just like us. She said he came at midnight, said he looked like a man but moved wrong, wore a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat, carried a shovel over his shoulder like it weighed nothing, even though it was old iron, heavy enough to need 2 hands." "What happened to her friends?" Tobias asked, still filming. Cora met his camera's eye. "She ran. They didn't. They were never found." "Fuck me," Lena breathed. Griffin laughed, but it sounded forced. "So your gran told you a spooky story about her friends who probably just moved away, and you've been scared of a cemetery ever since? That's..." He stopped. They all heard it. The sound of metal scraping stone, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from somewhere deeper in the cemetery. The sound of something being dragged. "That's just..." Griffin started, but Cora grabbed his arm. "Don't," she hissed. "Don't rationalize. Don't make excuses. That's how he gets you. You explain it away until he's right in front of you, and then it's too late." The scraping sound grew closer. Tobias's camera light swept across the monuments, catching fragments of names and dates, cherubs with eroded faces, crosses listing at drunken angles. Nothing moved, but the sound continued, getting louder, more deliberate. "Closer. We should go," Lena said. "Right now. We should." The scraping stopped. 4 or 5 heartbeats. There was nothing but silence and the sound of their breathing. Then Tobias's camera light caught him. He stood 50 feet away, beside a marble obelisk, so still he could have been carved from the same stone. The long black coat fell to his ankles, its fabric somehow darker than the surrounding night, as if it absorbed light rather than reflected it. The wide brim had shadowed his face completely, and across his right shoulder, resting with casual weight, was the shovel, iron old, its blade crusted with something that might have been earth or might have been something else. "Fuck," Griffin whispered. "Fuck, there's actually someone." The figure's head tilted. Slowly. The movement was wrong, too fluid, as if his neck had more joints than it should. "Don't look at his face," Cora said, her voice shaking. "Whatever you do, don't." The figure moved. Not walked. Moved. One moment he was by the obelisk, the next he was 20 feet closer, and they hadn't seen the transition. He simply existed in a new location, the way a frame skips in old film. "Run," Tobias said. They ran. The cemetery became a maze in their panic. Tobias kept the camera rolling out of pure instinct, his journalist's training overriding terror. The light bounced wildly across graves and monuments as they sprinted down the path toward the gates. Behind them, the scraping sound resumed. Not hurried, not rushed, steady and patient. The sound of something that had all the time in the world because time was something it owned. "The gates!" Lena shouted. "I can see." She stopped running so suddenly that Griffin crashed into her. The gravedigger stood in front of the gates. Impossible. He'd been behind them. They'd all heard him behind them. But now he was ahead, blocking their exit, the shovel sliding from his shoulder with a sound like a blade being unsheathed. "This isn't real," Griffin said. His voice cracked. "This isn't fucking real." The gravedigger's hand, and it was a hand, Tobias saw, pale and long-fingered, gripped the shovel's handle. The other hand rose slowly to his hat brim. "Don't look," Cora screamed. "Don't let him." But Griffin was already looking up, his eyes following that rising hand, compelled by the same instinct that makes people look at car crashes and open graves. The hat tilted back. There was a face beneath it. Or there wasn't. Both statements were true and false simultaneously. Tobias's camera caught it for a fraction of a second before his brain simply refused to process what it was seeing, something that suggested features without possessing them, a geometry of flesh that human eyes couldn't properly translate, eyes that were holes and also looking, a mouth that was closed and also screaming. Griffin made a sound, not a scream. Something worse, a wet, choking gurgle that came from his throat, but sounded like it originated somewhere deeper, somewhere internal and sacred. His chest caved in. Not struck, not wounded, just caved, as if some essential architecture inside him had been removed. His eyes rolled back, but they weren't white underneath. They were black, pools of absolute darkness that spread across his face like ink and water. He folded to the ground, and when he hit the earth, he didn't bounce or settle. He sank into it, the soil opening like a mouth, swallowing him in one smooth gulp. In 3 seconds, Griffin was gone. Not dead. Gone. As if he'd never existed except for the impression his body left in the grass. An impression that was already fading. Lena screamed and bolted sideways, off the path, between the graves. Tobias and Cora followed, their cohesion as a group shattered by pure animal terror. The scraping sound followed. Patient. Inevitable. They huddled behind a large mausoleum, its stone walls offering the illusion of protection. Tobias had lost the camera somewhere in the flight. His hands shook uncontrollably. "What the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck?" Lena was whispering, her words running together into a single prayer of denial. "He's hunting," Cora said. Her face was sheet white, but her voice was steady. "My grandmother said that's what he does. Hunts on death anniversaries. The souls of the dead draw him up from wherever he is. And when he's up, he's hungry." "For what?" Tobias asked. "Isn't it obvious?" Cora's laugh was broken glass. "For us. For whatever we have that the dead don't. He's a gravedigger, but he's not digging graves. He's harvesting." The scraping sound circled the mausoleum. First from the left, then the right, then impossibly from above. "He's playing with us," Lena whispered. "No," Cora said. "He doesn't play. He's just thorough. He knows we can't leave. The cemetery won't let us. Not until he's fed." "Bullshit." Tobias grabbed Cora's shoulders. "There has to be a way out. Your grandmother got out. She was lucky. Or," Cora's eyes widened, "or she gave him something else. Oh God. Oh Jesus, that's what she meant." "What?" "She said she left something behind. I thought she meant her friends. But what if you have to sacrifice something? Give him something willingly." The scraping stopped. Lena looked around the edge of the mausoleum and made a choking sound. The gravedigger stood 10 feet away, facing them directly. This close, Tobias could see details he wished he couldn't. The way the coat seemed to be made of fabric but moved like skin, breathing and pulsing. The way the shovel's blade dripped something that hissed when it hit the ground. The way the face beneath the hat was there and not there. A quantum uncertainty that made his eyes water and his skull ache. "Run," Cora said. "Out." But Lena was already running, sprinting toward a gap between monuments. The gravedigger's head swiveled to track her movement. Then his body followed, that same impossible skip frame motion. He was in front of Lena before she'd taken 3 steps. The shovel swung. It passed through her body without resistance, as if she were made of smoke. But where the blade passed, something came out, a luminous thread, silver white and writhing like a living thing. Her soul, Tobias realized with dreamlike clarity. He's pulling out her soul. Lena's scream cut off mid-breath. Her body crumpled, a puppet with severed strings. The silver thread wound around the shovel's blade, and the gravedigger lifted it to his face, the face that wasn't a face, and inhaled. The thread vanished. Lena's body sank into the earth, just like Griffin's. Tobias and Cora ran. They were separated in the chaos. Tobias found himself alone in the oldest section of the cemetery, where the stones dated back to the 1700s and leaned at angles that defied gravity. His breath came in ragged gasps. His heart hammered, so hard he thought it might break his ribs from the inside. The scraping sound was everywhere and nowhere. He spun in circles, trying to track it. But the acoustics were wrong, the sound bouncing off monuments in ways that suggested the cemetery had more dimensions than 3. A hand grabbed his shoulder. He screamed and whirled, fists raised. "Cora, Jesus Christ," he gasped. "I thought. We need to split up," she said quickly. "He can only hunt one at a time. I've been watching. He has to finish one before he starts another. That's fucking insane. We need to stick." "Tobias." She gripped his face with both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "One of us has to survive, to tell people, to warn them. That's how it works. That's the pattern. There's always one survivor." Her voice cracked. "Let it be you." "Cora, no." But she was already running, deliberately making noise, drawing attention. The gravedigger appeared at the end of the path, his head turning toward the sound like a predator, scenting blood. He moved after her with that terrible, patient stride. Tobias stood frozen for 1 heartbeat, 2. Then he ran. Not toward Cora, not toward the sound of pursuit. Away. He ran toward the gates, legs burning, lungs screaming, Cora's sacrifice burning in his chest like swallowed coals. Behind him, he heard the scraping sound, heard Cora's voice, calling out in defiance or prayer or both. Heard the wet, final sound of the shovel's work. Then silence. Tobias reached the gates and slammed into them with his full weight. They shrieked open, easier than before, as if the cemetery was satisfied, fed, willing to let him go now that it had been given its due. He tumbled through onto the road beyond and kept running, not looking back, not slowing until he'd reached his car 3 blocks away. Only when he was inside, doors locked, engine running, did he allow himself to look at the cemetery. The gate stood open, empty, still, but on the wind, he swore he could hear it, the patient, methodical sound of a shovel scraping stone. Waiting, always waiting, for the next anniversary, for the next sacrifice, for the next group of fools who thought legends were just stories. 3 months later, Tobias Cole sat in the archives of the Millworth Historical Society, surrounded by old newspapers and death records. He'd been researching obsessively since that night, trying to understand what he'd survived. The pattern was there once you knew to look for it. Every death anniversary, major ones with multiple casualties, produced disappearances. People who went to the cemetery and never came home, always in groups, always leaving one survivor. Always. The survivors never talked. Not officially, but Tobias had tracked down 3 of them. An elderly man who'd lost his friends in 1957, a middle-aged woman who'd lost hers in 1982, a younger man who'd lost his group in 2009. They all told the same story. The man in the black coat, the wide-brimmed hat, the shovel, the way he moved wrong, the way he harvested. Why? Tobias had asked the elderly man. What is he? The old man had looked at him with eyes that had seen too much and understood too little. Does it matter? He's there. He's always been there. Maybe he's death's servant. Maybe he's just something that crawled up from whatever's below us and found the cemetery a good hunting ground. Maybe he was human once, cursed to dig graves forever and needing something more than earth to fill them. How do we stop him? The old man had laughed, bitter and broken. Stop him. Son, people have been dying since there were people. You think those graves dig themselves? You think death doesn't need help with the harvest? He'd leaned forward. We built cemeteries on the assumption that death is the end. But what if we were wrong? What if death is just a door, and he's the doorman, making sure enough souls pass through to keep it open? Tobias had left without answering. Now, alone in the archives as autumn darkness fell outside, he looked at his calendar. Tomorrow was November 18th, the anniversary of a fire that had killed 12 people in 1923. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. We heard about what happened to your friends. We don't believe the official story. We're going to the cemetery tomorrow night to prove the legend is real. Want to come? Tobias stared at the message for a long time. He thought about Cora's last words. One of us has to survive. To tell people. To warn them. He'd survived. And he'd told them. Posted a story online. Tried to warn everyone. No one believed him. They never did. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Don't go. Please. It's real. It's all real. The response came immediately. LOL OK boomer. See you there or be square. Tobias closed his eyes. He thought about driving to the cemetery tomorrow, trying to stop them physically, but he knew how that would end. The cemetery took what it was owed on anniversary nights. If he went back, he'd just be adding himself to the harvest. One survivor, always one survivor, to spread the word, to warn others, to ensure there would always be more. Because that was the real horror, Tobias realized with a clarity like ice water. The gravedigger didn't need to hunt. He had a self-sustaining food source. Every generation, skeptics and believers alike would come seeking proof of the legend. And every generation, he would feed. The legend perpetuated itself. He was part of it now. The survivor, the warner, the prophet no one would believe, until they stood in the cemetery at midnight, heard the scraping of iron on stone, and looked up to see the face beneath the hat. By then, it was always too late. Tobias turned off his phone. Tomorrow night, somewhere in Millworth Cemetery, the gravedigger would emerge from whatever hole he inhabited. He would hunt, he would harvest, and one person would survive to tell the tale, to warn the next group. Who wouldn't listen? Who never did? The shovel kept scraping, the graves kept filling, and the legend lived on, feeding itself, feeding him forever. Some things are older than truth, some hunger's deeper than death, and some legends survive not despite the warnings, but because of them. The gravedigger knows this. He's always known, and he's very, very patient.
If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.